I'm starting stream now, and then we can just talk shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I appreciate that they put in the inspired intellect thing. I just don't know if it's ever going to see play, at least from like a competitive standpoint.
Especially after the brain freeze change. I think Frost was the only one that actually was poised to not take time anomaly, right?
Yeah. I ran some sims on like our current trees or whatever, and Fire gets like 4.5, Arcane gets like 3.8, and Frost pre-brain freeze change was getting like 2.8. So that 2.8 was like right in the realm of just being able to say, fuck it, I'm taking the intellect.
Yeah.
But I think with the brain freeze, they'll probably get bumped up and be locked into it too.
For what it's worth, obviously I have no data to back this up. I do think time anomaly slightly oversims for Arcane because it can just like milk the mana from like the random procs, I think, better than like a person can. Or at least your average player can.
Honestly, I think those
Paul.
percentages you listed off from your sims are really are really demonstrative of like how bad the procs are for Frost and how bad the Surge and Lust procs are for Arcane, because the clear casting proc is way more damage netted for Arcane than it is for Fire versus a Fire Blast proc, right? But you simply can't leverage the Lust and Surge. Even the Sim doesn't leverage it as well as like you would hope to, right? But you're right, Toe, that it probably undersims a little bit in that regard as well because of mana's usefulness.
Yeah.
I think Fire it probably oversims because like when you're playing Fire and you get a combustion proc, you're already like locked into like a fireball or whatever global you were already on. So you're losing that like 1.5, 2 seconds of cast time before you actually react to the combustion. Whereas the sim, anytime it enters combustion, it automatically like starts following that priority list.
Yeah.
So I think.
So is it like a priority in terms of like, so I know obviously you can't proc a thing while you already have the thing, but it's not a priority, right? It's still random. Like you can still, like it doesn't go like Lust cooldown proc or anything like that. Like you can get a proc. Yeah.
You could like clear cast 3 times in a row.
Yeah, the proc is fully 30, 30, 30, except for the rule conditionals, right? So if you have Lust up, it'll favor not lusting unless it's a non-time warp lust, and then it doesn't count it, right?
Yeah.
But then, like, for Surge, Combustion, Icy Veins, right, obviously it won't proc if it's up. But it also doesn't care if it's off cooldown. So, like, a lot of the time as Arcane, especially on, like, pulls, right? Because you'll Lust on pull, you'll have a clear casting that you got from pre-pull, and then you're doing your setup to cast Arcane Surge. And if you get a proc during that window, it's always Arcane Surge. And half the time you're casting it, and it feels really bad. So, yeah the rule conditionals make it a bit awkward at times.
Then on the flip side, go ahead, Toe.
I was going to say, I've been playing Demon Hunter recently, and the way that class works is if you press meta while you have like a meta from somewhere else, like it adds the duration on, and I'm like, why does everything not work like this? Like it doesn't make any. I don't see why like pressing combustion doesn't just add 12 seconds to your combustion.
Yeah, like you're playing Fire and you hate time anomaly, you hate time anomaly, hate time anomaly, and then all of a sudden you're like mid SKB cast, like you're about to ascend it, and you get combustion proc, and now you have a full combustion, and it's like this is the best talent in the world.
Yeah,
but that happens like 1 in every 20 pulls.
Or it's
I'm gonna
the
tell
boss
you,
where you don't lust on pull, and like as soon as you press combustion, like a lust proc comes up, and you're like, yes.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's definitely a talent of high highs and low lows, right?
Yeah.
It's funny because I finally took the time in like the last week or two. I've been playing a lot of Frost and Fire on Alpha, and God, I can't tell you how good Time Anomaly feels as Frost Fire Fire. It's like a totally different level from like Season 4 Arcane or Season 4 Frost, right? Where time anomaly procs, and half the time you're like, okay, whatever, and the other half it's like, okay, this kind of feels alright. But for Frost Fire Fire, it's like another level. Every proc feels good.
But Frost Fire, God, I hate that name.
Yeah.
It's just proc city. Like every single global, you're just pressing something that procced or some instant cast. Like I was looking at some Lanfear's logs, and like the number of fireballs he had to do was less than even like some people are doing on live right now with the full tier 30.
Yeah, I mean, I sat there at the dummies for probably a minute and a half without a hard cast. Like it not, and it's not just like Nihilotha where you didn't hard cast, but you were spamming Fire Blast Pyro the whole time. It's like you're using Phoenix Flames, you're using the Frost Firebolt proc, you're using, you know what I mean, Meteor, and you're using these tools in a way that really kind of folds into each other. It actually feels honestly like the best tree so far, tree spec combo, in my opinion.
That's interesting. I'm still an Arlo fanboy. But we'll see how I feel on the 5th when I actually get to play them.
Yeah, I think graphically Sun Fury looks really good, but like I said, Frostfire Fire just feels really smooth to play.
What are you? I haven't looked at logs, so what are you doing when you're not casting? Like, how do you have so many instants?
You're getting the go ahead, Porum.
So you get the Phoenix Flame reset stuff happens, right? You get the CDR from Excess Fire for it, right? The Frostfire Bolt proc happens way more often than I think they intend for. So like right now, you go through a couple of hot streaks and it procs. You know what I mean? So it's like very regular part of your rotation. That's probably the biggest push into that like no hard casting rotation.
So every time you meteor and you get that CMS effect, that gives you basically instant frost mastery. So you're almost guaranteed to proc a Frostfire Empowerment off of that, and it's just like this endless cycle of feeding it because you're just constantly procking it with all your meteors.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. No, I keep thinking that like Comet Storm procs Frostfire Mastery on every comet, doesn't it?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think that's lasting, but we'll see. I think it would be cool if like Frostfire was like the flatter SKB kind of high combustion uptime gameplay, and then like if Sun Fury ended up being like the combustion actually does damage gameplay, I'd be big into that.
That'd be a good like dichotomy. I would really appreciate both of the play styles being able to be used in like their respective content, but I just want that choice to exist. I don't want to be locked into another 4 years of SKB.
Yeah, no, I'm not here for that. I'm not gonna lie. I did read the notes, but I didn't actually look at where stuff is in the tree now. So I'm like rebuilding like a fire tree now.
Yeah. So for fire, they brought back like wildfire and stuff. I think the big thing they did though was Alex Strauss's Fury no longer causes your PFs to crit. That's now baked into a Call of the Sun King. And they put Ashen Feather on a choice node with Alex Strauss's Fury. So they separated that like damage first utility. So now you can use your DB and you're not like losing damage for it or making that trade off. I actually really like that choice node.
They also made the tree symmetrical now.
Oh yes, the biggest problem with the tree before, for sure.
Meanwhile, the Warlock tree.
Yeah, it looks like the BFA line puzzle thing that Orgok used to fail.
So one of the posts Lanfear did on the forums was like, even if you put Firestarter at the very top of the tree, it made it a mandatory choice, I still wouldn't pick it. And guess what they did? They put that thing right at the top.
Yeah, I'm trying to build a tree here with
all though.
I'm trying to not take Firestarter here.
Oh, you can skip it.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah, but I'm just seeing like what the permutations are. Oh, I guess if I take Ashen Feather now, I can take Master Flame. Master Flame's not that good though.
As it stands right now, for fire, at least in single target, the first 2 gates are basically hard locked. Like there's going to be 0 variance there. All your like optimizations and like flexibility happens in that 3rd gate with the capstone talents. And there's like 2, maybe 3 builds I could see coming out of there, depending on tuning. But like those
when I was
first 2
messing
gates
with
are
it,
hard locked.
when I was messing with it, I think Gate 2, the only question I really had was about like Heat Shimmer or Master and Flame, which is mostly just going to be a sim question, right? But everything else, like you said, you don't need the lit fuse living bomb stuff, so you're probably not going to take it, right? In single target.
I think you will take lit fuse. I don't know if you'll take anything past that.
Mm-hmm.
I think at least for a UI build, because for UI you don't need that flame accelerant and you don't need Master of Flame.
Do you know what?
So that
Do you know
kind
what's
of
really like? Heat Shimmer just doesn't make any sense with their design philosophy. They were like, Fire has too many procs, too many things going on. We're deleting half of them. They didn't, and then they added this. I was just like, why?
I'm actually kind of excited to see where Heat Shimmer goes, though. Just because you have that, and then you have the 300% Scorch talent as well with it. And it just seems like you might be able to get some decent Scorch hits now and again, which could be cool if it actually adds up to that, right?
So what that talent does, you know how right now we have Flame Accelerant that basically turns your Fireball into a Pyroblast, like damage equivalent? It's basically turning Scorch into a Fireball. So all
Is
you're
it really that low?
It's very similar. So on live tuning, a Scorch is about 1/5 the damage of a Fireball, as far as spell power modifiers go. So with these bonus effects, you end up reaching just over a Fireball at a much reduced cast time, which isn't always ideal, because if you're in like Lust or you have a time anomaly proc, it gets weird.
Or if you have stacks of Mana Addict.
Or, yeah. So I'm not a Heat Shimmer is just a very weird talent for me.
Yeah, it sounds cool because you could get the improved Scorch buff up, right? And that might be a bit more damage than the Down in Flames talent in that regard, right? Because you get the extra damage percent. You get this proc and then you use it right before going into your combustion or something like that, right? So it could have some potential benefits there for like UI.
I'm gonna be honest, improved Scorch is piss. Like, it's so bad.
My first thinking was that for like let's say like it pans out the way I maybe think, where like UI Sun Fury is like old sort of combustion actually does damage, but your combustion uptime is much lower. Like I could see the Scorch talents being good with like Burning Blood, like the Execute talent down in the tree, because like I don't see it being good with Frostfire or SKB because you just don't spend enough time pressing your filler spells. Like I just haven't I don't think Down in Flames has a hope in those kind of builds. You just don't press it ever.
I don't think I touched Scorch one time the whole time I was messing around with Frostfire. You just don't have enough GCDs for a spell that doesn't hard to add to what you're doing in the moment. Like I definitely see that same issue with filler just not being valuable to Frostfire.
Yeah, and Toe, you've brought this up several times as we've been talking. Anytime you need to put a modifier that says like 300% on a talent, I think that's like a cue that maybe the base spell should get some love and we should stop band-aiding it.
Yeah. This tree's really awkward if you want to skip that Scorch node. You can't get the Inflame without the Scorch node, and the Master Flame kind of sucks.
Yeah.
So I guess you're just taking Firestarter.
I mean, it's also a case, too, where you could branch into the Living Bomb talents and maybe get the single target talent there, right?
Weren't they removing Convection? I thought that was like a note that they wanted to get rid of Convection.
Did they nerf it or get rid of it?
I don't know.
I thought they just nerfed it.
I don't see it in these notes. Maybe I'm just going senile already.
I thought I remember reading something about Convection because they were like, we don't like Living Bomb being good on single target. But I think that's too many points to get down there. Like, I think you just have to, like, it's the same as it is on live, I guess. You just have to ignore that side of the tree, really. On a raid build.
I dropped like a cookie cutter talent build in our little chat. Like, the only thing I could see moving from there Fire's Ire is one of those crit effects that we don't really care about because it's just critical strike damage. So it's not like you're doing 5% more damage. You're doing like 2.5% more damage. So you might use that to like pick up Pyromaniac or something. But other than that, it's pretty set in stone down there. Obviously, with like
me. Where's your flame accelerant point going? So confused looking at this.
Lit Fuse probably.
Oh, you have lit fuse. Ah, okay, yeah. Yeah.
Just a free proc and single target.
Yeah. Okay, that's probably the floater point anyway. Yeah. You really feel point starved when you get to this last gate. I feel like I don't like a tree where you have like, I guess we've like 4 sort of, no, we've 5 capstones and 2 like not capstones but sort of capstones, and like you can't get that many of them, and I feel like at that point you should probably be condensing them down a lot.
It's a very wide tree.
Well, you can get 3.
Yeah, specifically at the bottom. It's kind of weird, right? Like the top and middle, like we said, you don't really have that much choice with. All of the choices in the capstones here. Just kind of opposite of how they did Arcane. Arcane, all of the choices in the first 2 tiers and like the capstones are basically dog water except for a couple of them.
Yeah, you probably have to take... If you want hyperthermia, you're basically locked into taking Burning Blood, and if you want Deep Impact or Blast Zone, I think you're locked into Firefall. Based on how I'm... Because like...
You
have to have 2 points into something to unlock those.
Mm-hmm. I could also see the Phoenix Flames talents not being appealing. And instead going for Pyromaniac, Hyperthermia, or the Deep Impact.
They made the best change they could have possibly made for those Phoenix Flames talents, though. They got rid of Charring Embers, so now you don't have that cringe uptime thing. You're just passively building the tier 30 procs. Thank God, I hate CE. It's such an annoying debuff. Like, you don't have to think about it half the time, but then when you do, it drops off for 4 seconds.
Yeah, I'm really not a fan of debuffs where like they're 95% passive, and then you just have this really like annoying 5% of the time where they're not.
To be fair, I think Phoenix Reborn still has a bit of that. Like, you still have to track it, right? So it's still something that Fire has on its weak auras that it's going to have to pay attention to, just to be aware of when that reset is coming, or so you don't underspend.
It's mostly just to make sure that you have a charge when it procs.
Mm-hmm.
Although,
I think also you don't want to be like, what's that?
That's less important now, because right now you need a charge on a procs, because you need a charge to get the refund to refresh Charring Embers. But if you don't need to refresh Charring Embers, you don't necessarily need to have a charge, unless you want to use it. Unless you want to use more than one straight away.
I think what you need to make sure is that you don't get close to capping as this is about to proc, right? So that you're not sitting there with like a capped Phoenix Flames resource and then you spend and refund and you're still capped for a while, right?
Yeah. It's basically just don't overcap. Well, the buff's called Flames Fury now, and don't overcap Phoenix Flames. Yeah.
I will say I really like the reworked Deep Impact. Adding that, like, you get the free Living Bomb proc, cool, that's good for AoE, but the reduced cooldown, 15 seconds, that puts Meteor down to a 30-second cooldown. That means if you're playing like a UI-based build, you can get 1 Meteor in between every UI and still like sync it with your Combust, even though it doesn't matter that much because UI doesn't affect Meteor's damage, which I still hate.
Yeah, that's odd. Even if they put it in the AoE section, so it's like 35% instead of 60, like, it's fine.
Yeah.
The way like Fevered Incantation and Fires are set up is like they really incentivize going like all of one side or all of the other side, because you basically have to spend another 2-pointer to unlock the capstones on the other side, which maybe in some scenarios you're fine with, but
so Fire's Ire I don't think is going to be that impactful because it is one of the bad crit buffs. So I think like if we need a point to move around, that's a node that we can pretty freely drop.
I think it's worse. I think you might actively avoid that node because it leads into the living bomb talents. Like the only thing that you need it for really is Firefall.
Yeah, Firefall's really good.
Firefall is really good.
issue
Anytime
there.
there's
Yeah,
cleave.
but is it worth 3 capstone points? Good, right? And then that's kind of where the sim's going to decide that, because it's like you can get Fire's Ire and Firefall, or you can get Pyromaniac, Hyperthermia, and Burning Blood, right? Like that's 3 points invested for Firefall, basically. So
Yeah, I quite like Burning Blood. I hope it works with one of the Scorched Talents, because I really hate having an Execute, but like basically not being an Execute class, because you're like, just like, what's the point? Like, it's just really annoying.
Yeah.
I, like, if you're gonna have Execute, like, have Execute.
And like our execute right now is so bad. Even with like improved scorch, like it is so bad. Like if you're doing an execute lust right now, it's worth dropping improved scorch and picking up firefall and single target. Because improved scorch is that bad.
Pyromaniac. What is I usually have the game open, but I don't know. Or control destruction is how much on live?
Control destruction is 2 and 4%, I think.
I think you're right.
Okay. I'm just trying to think, because we lose control destruction, or control destruction does something else now, right? Yeah, it does. So
sorry, it's 4 and 8%.
Right, so this isn't actually that good. It's 1 point instead of 2, but it's not actually going to change our execute that much. So we go from 8% to 10%.
No, it's all damage versus just pyroblast damage.
That's fair.
CD also affects the early execute as well, too, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure how much of our damage actually comes from pyroblast. It's like if you factor in the ignite, it's a lot. Like a lot. Yeah, this is probably worse than control destruction. Just one less point though, so it's probably fine. But yeah, maybe it's not that good. Now that we're talking about this, everything down here feels kind of not that good. Which I don't know. I guess I'll have to play with it to decide how that actually ends up feeling in reality. But
Pyromaniac, the reworked version of it, is fantastic. Once they get it working right on the alpha or beta, because it's just like a flat 8% chance to get a free stack towards your SKB or a free spender inside your UI combustion at 100% effectiveness. Like it's pretty sick.
So I didn't mess with it because Land said it was busted and stuff, so I wasn't even bothering. But do you know if the secondary pyro has any delay in its casting? Like,
so it shouldn't, but it will.
You know what I mean, right? I'm worried about the hot streak safety window.
It's not supposed to interfere with hot streak or heating up generation. It just counts as consuming one for effects that, like Sun King's Blessing, that require those. But it's not supposed to contribute towards your heating up cycle.
Okay, but it counts as spending a hot streak for the purposes of everything.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
That's interesting.
Wonder if it can proc hypothermia.
I wonder, I'm sure that makes it very strong, honestly, if it's procking the hot streak stuff, because that means it's generating spellfire spheres, that means it's contributing to frostfire empowerment, right? So that definitely makes Pyromaniac, I think, a little bit stronger than I initially thought.
An 8% chance is pretty damn good for a talent like that.
Yeah. I'm a fan. Okay, what would like an AoE build look like? I was just scrap a lot of this shit. We probably still play Scorch.
Yeah, I feel like it's a difficult thing to peg down an AoE build in Fire right now, because so many of the things that you do normally already generate AoEs, so it's going to be like hard to say tuning wise how they compare against Living Bomb specialized builds.
I think that we're going to see quite a bit of variety for AoE, like whether you're trying to maximize like a low target cleave or like 8 target plus. Like that's where you're going to see all the flexibility coming into play.
Yeah. Okay, this is probably right. This is probably what gate after the first gate looks like. I have no flame accelerant. That's probably fine. And I have no convection. And I have no mark of the fire. Oof. Right, this probably goes over here. Yeah, maybe something like this. The meteor is still insane on AoE. This?
Is
I don't know if you have the
intensifying
stream
flame
open.
something you want to give up?
In AoE, if we're talking pure AoE, yeah, sure, why not?
I'm thinking like M plus, right? I mean, let's be real here, right? There aren't any AoE builds. No one builds for AoE outside of the very, very like once an expansion council fight, right?
No, intensifying
Well-
flames is very good in single target.
Yeah. But I mean like fire's been good what? 2 seasons, like top tier, like 2 seasons of expansion, and like one of those was a flame strike season, right? So can happen.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
So
But the big thing though is we're still waiting to see where they're going to land on Ignite because they want to rein in Ignite for AoE purposes. They don't want us doing any more Ignite cleave. So if they rein it in so much that it's not that impactful in single target, then intensifying flames is going to lose a lot of value, especially in like a key build where you're already kind of stressed for points. But like in current fire, no, you would want intensifying flames for any like decently high key.
yeah. Well, I was thinking of flame strike build first. This maybe though it's not that different. Like if you drop Mark of the Fire Lord, let's say you put that in intensifying flame, and you do everything else the same. Like this is probably fine for AoE, right? Like ignite based AoE. Because
I
a lot
think
of the
if you're
AoE
taking
talents
Quick
don't
Flame-
require flame strike.
I think
Yeah,
if you're
we can get rid
taking
of
Quick
that.
Flame, though, Mark of the Fire Lord's going to be locked in.
Yeah, so let's say we wanted to do an ignite build. What am I doing? No, please don't tell me I have to take Fire Starter again. No, Flame Accelerant, let's go.
Flame Accelerant would have some synergy.
I think you might take Alex Strauss's Fury instead, actually.
Well, Alex
Is that a
Russ's
fire
Fury
starter?
is just the DB down.
Yeah. I kind
Thinking
of like
for,
this.
for AoE in general.
Yeah, so this would be big lit fuse, combustion gives lit fuse, firefall, meteor, and then unleashed inferno. Yeah.
I think Firefall's kind of in a weird spot because any like flame strike based build, you're not going to want Firefall because it doesn't trigger off flame strike. So it's kind of in like that weird spot where it's in the AoE side of the tree, but if you're doing like a really AoE focused build, you're not going to want it. It's more like that low target cleave where you're still pyroblasting.
Oh yeah, this is me trying an ignite one now. Although
Well, is it going to be an ignite build or a living bomb build? I think it's living bomb now.
yeah. Yeah, well it's
They
more like
kind of fold
what
into
are you
each other a bit.
what are you pressing when you get hot strike, I guess is the real difference between Pyroblast and Flame Strike, right? I mean they don't want to kill I don't think they want to kill Ignite play because a lot of these talents on the right hand side do affect Pyroblast as well. Right? So or well enough of them.
It's hard to tell right now because Mastery is bugged to hell and back on beta or alpha.
Right. Have we missed anything for fire?
I think we've kind of rambled through most of it.
Sun Fury.
What were
There's
the
no
other-
Frostfire changes, right? No, there weren't. Which
Oh,
one's Gravity
yeah,
Lapse?
Gravity Lapse is that AoE 3-target stun in the center of the
yes.
tree. So they buffed Lessons into Debilitation, and now it's like super good because it doesn't like mess up your empowered spell cycle. but that kind of made gravity lapse completely worthless because you're just losing blast wave for a 3-target stun.
Well, it's 5 now.
Yeah, bumping it up to 5, that's good. I still think in most situations, blast wave is just better.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
gravity lapse, it will have that niche where like you're standing out at 35 yards and you can't run in to like do a stop. So now you can just stand out there and hit your gravity lapse.
I actually
So
don't think we'll play gravity lapse in anything at all. Lessons in debilitation, adding the supernova / gravity lapse to the start of it adds damage to your combustion and arcane surge. So I just in PvE, I don't see any argument really why you'd ever go gravity lapse.
yeah, I think um so lessons now it just fires one for free now, yeah. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So it's just free damage, free stop on your CD window, which is actually going to be, I think, really good for fire and PvP because now you have an OG CD stop that starts your damage window open and auto purges for 12 seconds. So like, I think that's going to be really, really strong and annoying for other classes.
It's going to be really nice for like keys as well because I don't know how many times I've had to give up a global to spell steal something that's going to kill the group. Sometimes I think it'll be
during
annoying though.
CDs.
Yeah, sometimes it'll be annoying because it's like I want that buff so I can buff myself. But kind of being able to go hands off keyboard, I don't need to do stops. It's auto doing it. That's kind of nice.
I feel like at the point where you have a 5 targets done, just make it AoE. Like,
Yeah.
that seems quite silly to me, but
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even 5 targets too, like in PvP, right? That's a hunter and all their pets and their healer. Like you're really doing everything at that point. So I couldn't agree more that it should just be straight up an AoE.
Okay. Do we want to go to Arcane? There's no frost changes, right? Other than the like indirect time anomaly affecting frost, which we kind of already talked about.
And spell slinger changes they did as well that affect Frost and Arcane, but I think starting with Arcane probably makes more sense.
Those spell slinger changes were kind of big because they now interact with mastery, right?
They interact with everything now. So everything except for volatile magic, the choice node with unerring proficiency, the one that buffs Supernova Ice Nova. That one they missed, but every other splinter interaction benefits from Arcane's mastery, procs Arcane Echo, benefits from Shatter. So it's overall like a lot better or more, tied to the specs hero talent tree now.
That's kind of nice because I was really worried that Arcane Echo was just going to die out. But maybe with a spell slinger build, those splinters will be enough to keep it relevant.
Oh, I definitely think for Spellslinger it will. I actually think if they do a similar treatment for Sun Fury, it probably will as well. A big issue with Sun Fury right now is like Arlo cast Meteor and Meteor's Flame Patch effect proc Arcane Echo and Arlo's Arcane Surge cast procs Echo, but nothing else does. So G-Pie, Pyro, Flame Strike, Arcane Barrage don't proc it. And I think if they whitelisted those spells for it, it would probably go a long way towards helping it out. I also think the meteorites, if I remember right, from Incandescence didn't proc it as well.
Those meteorites are sick. I love those things.
They do a ton of damage too.
Anywhere you want to start in the Arcane tree?
I mean, I think the biggest things, right? So they added a new talent, Surging Urge, right below Arcane Surge, and it makes Arcane Surge scale up off of Arcane Charges a bit. And they also swapped Slipstream from the left of that to the right of it, just inverting the Mana Adept Slipstream choice there. Overall, I can't hate this enough. It's just another talent competing with Slipstream, a talent that I think most people think should be baseline. I at least think it should be like a mandatory pick in the tree where you have like Slipstream Chrono Shift as a gate that you have to go through and you have to pick one of them, right? I think that would be a really healthy thing for the spec. What else did they do? They
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 change.
changed Aether to be a determinate proc instead of percent chance. And then they nerfed Lay Drinker, which I don't know what they were thinking with that. It's already a really low damage talent.
They changed Magi Spark, right, which was a big change because before, so now it's like on impact. They basically echo on impact rather than giving you buffs on cast, so you can like barrage and then touch of the Magi, and like the barrage will benefit. Because I think on the last show we mentioned it, like Magi Spark had an issue where, like, when do you barrage? Because you don't want to like clear your arcane charges, so it's just like when do I barrage? Whereas now you just barrage before the touch, and like I think that's a small change, but it's like big impact.
I think it's a really
nice.
big change for Spellslinger. For Sun Fury, I was actually kind of excited to work out the problem of when do you barrage, because you have incandescence to recover those charges to full, which Spellslinger doesn't have. And so that was an interesting theory crafting problem, but I can admit that not barraging into touch is pretty unintuitive, right? And maybe maybe that's just how it should work.
Yeah.
Were you about to say something, Degen?
Oh, I was going to say pretty much what you were going off of. Like, it made it a lot simpler. Like, they are really putting the training wheels on Arcane and making it a very straightforward spec, which I think is good for the general player base, but for people who like the problem solving aspect of it and like the convolutedness of it, they're kind of like kicking that down the hill.
We should, before we get into anything else on Arcane, we should probably mention the clear casting rework, since I actually don't think we did that.
Oh, true.
And we haven't talked about Arcane since this got reworked. So if you don't know, clear casting's chance to trigger is no longer tied to mana spent. It's just a 10% chance on any spell. You cannot generate it out of combat, and you get 1 charge whenever you cast Evocation.
They also added that into Surge, so when you Surge, you'll get that guaranteed CC proc, which is nice for like Touch of the Magi, because now you have that guaranteed AM. But
yeah,
another interesting knock-on effect of that too is so I know people who've been playing Mage for a long time, and Arcane specifically, will remember the term fishing, where before you went into your cooldown window, you'd go and try and spam Arcane Blast until you got 3 charges banked up for your cooldown window. The Evo and Surge adding that is a huge boon towards not having to do fishing again, which I think is a really popular change, and kind of something we haven't really thought about as much in Dragonflight, because we've had that mana spend window from Siphon Storm being so long. But they also shortened Siphon Storm, so it's a 20-second duration now. So our cooldown window is going to be shorter regardless, which is really nice too, I think.
Yeah, well, it should just reduce the amount of time you're doing stuff outside your cooldowns, right? Like, it should still cover your entire cooldowns.
Yeah. 20 seconds is definitely enough to cover everything, yeah.
What is Arcane Debilitation?
That's what Arcane Battery is now. So above
yeah, but where
Aether
is it?
Attunement.
Above Aether Attunement.
Damaging a target with arcane missiles increases the
top,
damage they
top
take.
right from Evo.
Okay, yeah.
And then Time Loop just does the same thing it did before with Battery, with Debilitation instead.
Okay, I'm going to be honest, I've not looked at the Arcane tree since we last talked about it, because Blizzard won't give me alpha, and I haven't noticed this tree's not symmetrical either. This chrono shift.
It's been killing me.
What
Another
I
reason
hate,
to make Slipstream and Chrono Shift a choice node, right?
Yeah.
what I hate is I just put together just clicking what I think would be good, and my build now has no Mana Adept, no Slipstream, and no Chrono Shift.
And no Presence of Mind, I'm sure. And probably no Charged Orb.
No Charged Orb.
Is it a single target build? It probably doesn't have Arcane Cleaving anymore either, right? Because that is now a capstone ability, and I couldn't disagree with that more.
Here for them. This is what I put together.
So I've been leveling a bunch of mages on Mop Remix, and the one thing I've noticed more than anything on there is the spec comes alive when you get Arcane Cleaving. or Arcane Cleave rather. It's such an important ability for the toolkit. Yeah, I hate this, Degen. This is
Why
I
does
actually I
surging
didn't pick up Illuminated Thoughts.
why does surging urge even exist?
I don't know.
Like you don't.
we already had like a weak kind of throughput talent in that area with Mana Adept, right? It definitely doesn't feel like it fills any kind of niche or usefulness.
Yeah, and like it doesn't help gameplay because you do that anyway. So like, I don't know.
Why is Arcane
The only thing
Debilitation 2 points? I hate that.
the only thing I'd say I'm not fond of with the tree linked degen is Arcane Tempo. I think you would drop that for probably Resonance, Time
Illuminated
Loop, Mana
Thoughts.
Adept, or Illuminated Thoughts, yeah, or even Slipstream if you're feeling bold, right? You want to actually feel something other than pain.
How does arcane debilitation work? Is it stacking and does it get consumed by the next spell?
No, it's every missile puts a debuff that it stacks, but they have separate durations, right?
Right.
So it falls off naturally on its own, whether you keep stacking it or not.
Do you know how long that lasts?
4 seconds, I think. So it's not super
Oh.
gameable. Like if you have like 3 clear castings ready to go, you know what I mean? You can drop them all into it and follow up with a blast, and that blast is going to be really potent. But like, yeah, it's not a really long duration or anything.
It's just another thing to stack into my only Barrage Harmony build. Triple AM into Harmony, let's go.
Yep.
Oh, I'm so ready for no arcane blast arcane. Oh no, we can't even do that anymore, right? Literally don't let
No.
you. Brutal.
No, so one of the big changes they did make with the clear casting thing, originally all damaging spells had that same 10% chance to proc clear casting. In the latest build, they bumped up Arcane Blast, so it's like 15% chance to proc it now, plus whatever other effects there are.
Yeah. Is that a
I haven't
talent or is that
actually-
baseline?
That's baseline. I haven't actually checked out the details on that. My biggest concern is that they're just going to copy paste the Legion clear casting proc into the War Within, and the issue with that is Barrage wouldn't have any proc chance under the Legion system. So I'm worried about what spells they're going to whitelist or not for that particular thing, because if they whitelist counterspell, I'm just gonna lose it. I've been rotationally using counterspell for years now, and I'm sick of it.
Yeah. Why did it not work in Legion?
In Legion, it was just hard coded Arcane Explosion and Arcane Blast proc
Right, okay,
clear
yeah,
casting
yeah.
and nothing else, right?
I
But
don't
the
know,
way
dude.
they
I didn't play that
worded
spec
things
in
in
that
this,
expansion.
I don't blame you. It had good tools in Legion, but it just never had the tuning behind it to be worthwhile, right?
Yeah.
But I think like the really interesting things is if missiles can proc it, if barrage can proc it, I think that's going to be a pretty good feeling to like get it, fire off a clear casting and get a proc immediately with it. That'll be good haptic feedback.
Yeah. God, I
I
hate
feel
this
like
tree.
I hate it for single target. I feel like a lot of what they did is good for AoE because you're going to be generating a lot more CC procs and stuff like that's going to make it feel a lot better. But in single target, they like took the legs off of it. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'll largely be alleviated by the hero specs too. So like you proc a lot of splinter storms in single target. You do an AoE as well, but like that 20% clear casting proc chance on storm it comes up pretty often. I think overall you're not going to feel a huge difference going from one to the other. At least that's my hope. But AoE feels freaking phenomenal. I would also say Spellslinger, specifically for Arcane and AoE, feels really good.
Do
speaking
you
of
have an
hero
example
talents,
build?
for AoE. Yeah.
For while you're
So I
getting that.
actually
Speaking of
ahead.
hero talents, do you want to touch on your new favorite hero talent, Spellfrost Teachings?
Oh yeah. So Spellfrost Teachings, they changed it so that it is now instead of proccing an Arcane Echo that adds damage or a Glacial Assault that adds damage, it now procs a reset on your orb spell as Frost and Arcane, and it does a bit more damage. For Frost, it feels freaking phenomenal. Honestly, I didn't expect it to feel half as good as it does. Getting those resets feels great. Getting the extra procs generated from that feels great. But then as Arcane, you get on Arcane and you reset Arcane Orb, and it does less damage than a 2-charge blast. And you're just like, why the fuck did I just use this spell? Like, and I'd also add to the old Spellfrost teachings, the Arcane Echoes and Glacial Assaults would proc on targets that weren't your primary target, which graphically looked really cool, right? Like while you were using your CDs, you had these large Arcane Echoes firing off on targets that you weren't even looking at, and it just looked really cool.
Yeah, is that a big like Arcane Orb? I know you're saying the damage sucks, but like, are the charges not relevant, or do you not find them to be relevant, or anything like that?
I mean, you if you're not pressed for mana, there's just no real reason to hit barrage and single target, right? That's
Sure.
really the big thing. So you don't really. I'm not even sure you'll really use the charges.
So
So here I'm not sure if this is 100% right, but that's the AoE tree I think I was
Oh
playing
right, are you
around with.
talking? You're talking specifically on AOE here, right? Okay, I thought you were talking
Yeah, yeah.
single target as well.
Well, I was for Spellfrost teachings. I was kind of talking about both.
Oh
And
yeah,
for
that's
Spellfrost teachings, the single target orb just doesn't hit hard enough to feel good. I think
but
maybe there's like a world where maybe you run orb barrage and you have like a barrage centric build as in like an M plus situation, right, for single target. But um, I'm just I have a lot of reservations about that actually playing out that way.
so looking at this, I agree. It's like very lackluster for specifically single target, but I'm thinking like the AA tree room where you just have like
Hmm.
infinity adds and you have your uncapped orbs getting another reset, bumping their damage up by 50%. It's gonna be disgusting.
Oh yeah, and it's 10 seconds of 50%, right? So that's
Yeah.
all of your orb barrage procs after that. And I'd also say too, once you get going and you're like in surge and you're generating the double splinters, this procs all the time. Like there were periods where frost and single target, I had like 4 frozen orbs up at once. You know what I mean? It really does kind of feel impactful, more so than I thought originally.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I I don't know. I whenever I read the talent, I didn't think it was too bad. Like, I know the damage Arcane Orb is bad on single target, but I don't think you're not pressing it for the damage a lot of the time, right? It's for like charges. And I know what you're saying about mana, but you can like, if you're playing this talent, you can like aggressively spend mana so that like, when it procs, you can like do something with it. But I don't
Perhaps,
know.
but also consider too that for Spellslinger, right? Um, you really want to consume your Nether precisions, and you get a lot of clear casting from Storm. So like you're really in single target, very hard locked into that CCAM NP spend cycle, right? And so
Yep.
spending mana aggressively isn't always really in your hands in that regard.
Speaking of mana spend, how does mana feel right now for Arcane in single target? Is it still
Tight.
relevant?
On the War Within, it feels really tight, much tighter than in Dragonflight or Shadowlands. Like you, especially as Sun Fury, because you're incentivized to kind of dump your clear casting as soon as you get it. Um, it's pretty easy to run I think, right now. Although that part of that could also be because I'm using test characters. You know what I mean? And these characters don't have mastery stats like a live character would. So
And
Yeah,
you're getting
I was gonna ask what the item level is. of beta characters or alpha characters. Do you know what it is?
Not
Not
offhand. I think it was
not the
like
number.
513 or something like that.
I was gonna say not the number, but do you know if it's like equal to normal, heroic,
I think
dungeons?
I think end of leveling, like
Right.
pre-raid,
Okay.
is probably the level it's at. I think I have like 23 crit, like 13 haste, and like 38 or something like that mastery. So it's right around where we were prior to stepping foot into Vadi.
Never heard
I'm
anyone call it
curious.
Vadi.
I'm curious to see how haste plays into Arcane's gearing with the all the haste you get from Sun Fury. Because I know fire, or I'm theorizing that fire is going to play lower base haste than we're accustomed to.
I
Yeah,
could see that happening with Arcane as well for Sun Fury. What was that, Toe?
I was gonna say we play a lot of haste as right now. It's doesn't take a lot. I would like to see fire move. I don't like super high haste fire. Like I like crit fire better.
I like haste fire because it makes your rotation smooth or whatever, right? It's the one stat that you can feel outside of just numbers. My issue is with how weak mastery becomes, and prior to some bug fixes, how weak crit is. We kind of just get forced into that like haste verse PvP style gearing. It's never good when you have a dead stat, and it's never good when you're a verse scaling stat. Just look at Windwalkers gargling in the corner for the last 6 years because their only good stat is verse. Um, so I wouldn't mind seeing some value, like subtracted from haste because we're getting it passively. Um, and then maybe being able to be a little bit more flexible and picking up some mastery and single target, picking up a little bit more crit, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's all relative to like um how fast you want the inputs to some degree on how good haste feels or not, right? Because like 35% haste feels really good on Arcane for me, but like 70% haste, and I'm like, okay, this is too much. I'm like, I'm like
Yeah.
constantly on edge of my seat here, trying to make sure I'm queuing spells properly and stuff. So it's definitely like, and Mop Remix I think highlights that a lot, where you've just got like 100% haste all the time, and so you feel kind of the jankiness of really high haste sustained.
Yeah. I started playing Fire and Legion, which is like the, Pyroclasm hard hitting combust expansion. I'm like very into like fire that smacks really hard rather than like goes fast, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
It's kind of like where my preference lies. But yeah.
I am also a boomer.
Oh,
I,
is Legion of Boomer expansion now? 8 years ago, I
no,
guess.
no,
I mean, it was
Uh,
quite a while, yeah.
no, so the dichotomy here is if you like 12-second combust and maximizing that burst window, you're a boomer. If you like SKB, you're a zoomer.
SKB
Uh,
just came out.
like 4 years ago at this point.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, like
Jesus, we're all boomers. That's how that
everyone's
goes.
playing Cataclysm and talking about archaeology, and I'm just like I did that. If there's one thing in this game that I like in all of the years I've been playing it that I don't want to do again, it's pre-raid archaeology. Like,
Gotta go get your staff, man.
yeah. Well, I was playing warrior, so I was getting the troll sword.
Ah,
Well, yeah.
even
No,
worse.
I
So
still
there's
don't
some
have it.
to bring things back a bit to the AoE tree that I linked earlier. Um, there are some things that are kind of up in the air, like Arcane Familiar versus uh amplification. Um, there's also a world where maybe you want Aether attunement, and so you pick up debilitation to get to it. I think the biggest concerns I have um are Charged Orb and Arcane Tempo. These are historically weaker AoE talents, but also they're the talents you feel. And so it's gonna feel really bad to have to drop those for better throughput talents. Um and then also another thing to note too is like this build is severely weaker on single target because of the loss of Aether and Energized Familiar, and it's even possible Energized Familiar is something you want in AoE too, because that's Arcane Echo procs. During Surge, no less, which is when you want them the most. So I don't know if you guys think anything about this that what might work. I think maybe Impetus. I left that in there. I probably didn't mean to. I probably would take that out and put it somewhere else.
I might get shot for saying this. What do you think about dropping Siphon Storm for Mythic Plus? Flattening out your damage profile.
I don't think there's a chance in hell. It's too much damage. Yeah. On top of, so it's funny, right? They nerfed it, and when they nerfed it, I was like, wow, we might actually have a siphonless Arcane. It's a possibility. And then they added the clear casting to it, and now it's like, okay, all right, I give up. But honestly, like in all my testing, I tried a lot of different builds without Siphon. I don't have, it's just me testing, so it's not simulation data. It's not going to be as robust. But like without Siphon, I just did no fucking damage. It was devoid of damage, right? Your burst is completely flattened out without it, way more than I expected. I just don't see it.
I feel like Siphon Storm has become the cooldown. Like, I know Surge and Magi Spark is supposed to be your cooldowns, but I feel like Siphon Storm is your cooldown and should probably be down that center path. I don't know if I like it going down the side there.
I was going to say, I think one of the issues is that Evocation is over here. Like, once you got Evocation, you only have one more point to go before you're on Siphon Storm. If, like, Evocation was somewhere else and Siphon Storm required a larger point commitment to get there.
Like, where they put the new Surge talent, the piss damage adding up for Arcane charges, that would be a great spot for Evo. Because then it's like, you're lining up all your cooldowns right down the row.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Within 3 levels, you've got your CD kit, right? Your core Arcane cooldowns. I agree with you. I think Siphon should require a lot more point investment, to the point where it's competitive with Harmony, Nether Munitions. Another thing that just completely blew me away with the latest build was they nerfed Lay Drinker. In all of my testing, in like the most optimal circumstances, Lay Drinker was like 1.8% of my damage in 5 target, and nerfing it 30%, it's just a dead talent on release. I don't see any world in which we take that. Like, I would be surprised if Concentration isn't on par with Lay Drinker at that percentage. And Concentration's probably not as bad anymore now, right? Because they changed how clear casting works. So rule of 3s would actually make sense, but they got rid of it. So
rest in piss. Don't bring it back.
Of course, but you know what I mean, though. Now that it has some coherency in the kit, that's when they get rid of it. Not the last 6 years that we've had it on our talent tree and not picked it.
Another thing you're sort of relevant to what you're saying is the other capstones just feel like they suck. Like, it's one thing to say like Siphon Storm's overtuned, but like, it's, with Fire, where we just have these like 7 nodes at the bottom, and you're like, wow, which of these am I taking? It's like, I don't really want any of these when I look at the Arcane tree.
Mm-hmm.
They're very they're very uninspiring, as well as being numerically not that good.
I am a massive fan of Harmony. Like, was it Dragonflight Season 1? Like, lining up a great Harmony on like Dathia, like that tickled me. I love Harmony. I hate what they've done to it, where it's just never worth taking. And I'm hoping that we do see some fringe builds, especially with like Nether Precision and Arcane Barrage interacting now, where we can pick up Harmony for that on-demand 5-target boom.
I could definitely see the potential for like a low cleave target kind of build that incorporates Harmony and Lay Drinker to kind of have like a big satisfying Arcane Harmony hit. I think the biggest issue is like you said, Toe, right? Siphon Storm is insanely good, or Barrage is insanely good in AoE, And then everything else here is not insanely good at all in anything. Like Aether's going to be good in low target cleave with Harmony. It's going to be good in AoE too, right? And in single target, um, but like Arcane Echo got hit hard by the removal of Nether Tempest. Um, Enlightened is it's just as easy to get, so it's not really gated behind anything, and it's actually stronger than some of the bottom row stuff. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of compelling capstone stuff. Like I said earlier when we were talking about fire, right? It's very much the opposite. All of your choices are in those first two gates, and then you get to the third gate and you're like, okay, I need Siphon Storm, I need Nether Munitions, and I need either Orb Barrage or Aether, right? And everything else is predetermined.
Yeah. Rev up Bombardment to like 70% and get it down in the capstone area with Harmony. And then we'll see something interesting.
I think a big issue with the Arcane tree is the pathing. Like, you have these mandatory talents. Like, you have to go to Evo, you have to get Siphon Storm, and those are just dead ends, right? You can't branch off of them and come grab, Arcane Harmony off of it. You need, Leysight, because that's 30% increased NP, but you're just spending 2 points to get there, and then you can't branch out from there. Like, there's no, interconnection between these, 4 pillars, and you're just kind of stuck spending points to get the one talent out of them you want.
Yeah.
While Fire has, two gates that lead to everything, Arcane has 2 gates that lead to specific rows that you can choose from, right? There's nothing beyond that.
Yeah,
It's a lot of dead ends.
It might not be obvious looking at it, but I'll show it on stream. You can basically draw a line down here that cuts these two things off completely.
Mm-hmm.
And the same on the other side. There's basically a line down here where these are they get cut off really early. They're cut off basically here. This area is where the tree branches out and you can't get back, which is very early. That's the 5th row.
That's level 25 or something.
Yeah, it's right out the row right after Arcane Surge. You have to where you go is going to determine where you end up, and that's way too early. And then all of the capstones suck. I think they need capstones that do change gameplay. I think that's a big thing of the fire one. Got your Phoenix Flames buffs, refreshing Phoenix Flames. You've got Reduce CD on Meteor, Hyperthermia, SKB, Unleashed Inferno. All of these things do something. Whenever you play with or without them, you notice the difference. But I mean, I don't know what Arcane Harmony's doing now, but you can almost treat it like a passive on live. Siphon Storm, press it before your CDs. Light Drinker, I guess, is completely passive.
Yep.
And then Orb Barrage, I do
no
think
control.
fits the bill of what I'm saying. Orb Barrage, I think, is a good capstone, but
I think Aether Attunement is as well, right? The AoE missiles, you stack it 3 times and then you get a proc. I think that's something that you pay attention to, you feel it. You know what I mean? It's something that's interactive with the other pieces.
yeah.
But then you have Arcane Debilitation, Harmony, Nether Munitions, Echo, and Concentration, and Lay Drinker. It's just a lot of talents that just don't do shit.
Yeah. I'm not even thinking, it's not just the talents, but it's that one at the bottom that's your banger talent.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the right pieces to the puzzle are in the tree. It's just the organization and the pathing of them is really, really awkward.
Okay, right. We are over an hour, but let's say we did an exercise where right, let's say pick 4 or 5 talents in this tree to be capstones. Forget about all of the other pathing, and if they're not capstones from a gameplay perspective, and if they're not numerically capstone level, we'd buff them up to that level. What 4 or 5 talents are you going for?
I think Siphon and Orb Barrage are locked in, right? For all 3 of us, right? We can all agree those are capstone worthy talents. I think I think Magi Spark could be that capstone. But it needs to do a bit more. Right now it's just you barrage into touch and then you missile AB and it's done. It's not really interesting, right? It doesn't change anything you're already going to do. I think Arcane Bombardment would make a great capstone out of the talents available. I think something similar to what Charged Orb does, maybe expanded on a little bit, would make a sensible capstone. And then I think for a fifth, that's hard. There's like nothing else that really stands out to me. What do you think, DGen?
I think what I would do is have Arcane Bombardment as the not the capstone, but the precursor to the capstone, and then combine Resonance and Arcane Cleave as your capstone. I think that's very like visually impactful and like meaningful gameplay. So I think like having those two feed into each other would be a really good like capstone or two-piece capstone.
Yeah. I quite like that idea. I really like the idea of Bombardment being a capstone. Like another thing to think about capstones as well is like you want to think of the permutations, right? If you have like 5 capstones and I get 3 of them, you want to think of like, okay, what are like the combos that make sense, and like just from like that gameplay perspective before we even get into numbers. So you look at things like Harmony plus Bombardment, or Harmony, Bombardment, and your hypothetical Barrage one, or like the Siphon Storm plus Magi Spark, like things like that. Like they just, even if they're simple,
Build
I think
off
it's like
each other.
Yeah, it's even if they're obvious sometimes, I think it's like good game design to have like someone look at a tree and pick these things and be like, yes, these make sense together, and like that makes me feel good when I pick them or build my character, which I don't really think this tree has, because it just feels like it's just all number stuff, or a lot of number stuff.
I also wouldn't mind seeing a very Arcane Missile focused like pathing. Like you have something that goes like improved AM into amplification into Aether Attunement into Harmony. That would be a really cool pathing, because you're like, yep, every time I click this button, I'm ramping up my AMs. But as it stands right now,
sorry, go ahead.
As it stands right now, you have your Arcane Missile buffs all the way up here, and then down in the corners, Arcane Harmony and Aether Attunement. It's just like they're on opposite sides of the tree, and it doesn't make much sense from a continuity perspective.
I think one of the most bizarre things in the tree is actually Eureka's placement. That talent is insanely strong, much stronger than it sounds like.
Where is it?
And it's easily skippable if you're not paying attention. If you're a nooblet or something, and you're like, wow, I'm leveling and Arcane Blast feels really strong, I don't need the stupid missile talent. But it's absolutely I think going to be like a locked in talent for all situations, and I think it stands out in the tree as too strong for the second gate. I think it's probably something that should unlock Aether Attunement, or I also think, you brought up the missile point. It's funny because they definitely had intentions when they built this tree to have like, okay, here's your Siphon Storm capstone. That's always been there, whatever. They didn't want to rock the boat too much. But then here's your missile tree. Here's your Touch of the Magi tree. Here's your Arcane Blast tree, and here's your Barrage tree, right? From left to right. The Ley Drinker being a trackable buff was probably more interesting than it is now. It also was a lot better. I really, really hope they buff Ley Drinker to compete here. I think it could be a good capstone in a way. I think the things it lacks is there's no way to prevent spending it. So once it procs, if you don't have a clear casting, you can't not spend it, right? You either blast or barrage, and so there's no way out of that. I think that's probably the biggest hole with that talent, and I think if you filled that talent, it might actually fit a capstone level talent, right?
Yeah, my immediate thought here is, you like, if this only affected Barrage or something, then you could like control when it went off, and then you can move it into sort of like a Barrage grip in the tree or something like that, and then that's what I would like. I think we're sort of suggesting tearing the entire tree down at this point.
Yeah. There's another fun, terrible quirk with Ley Drinker that I found as well, is it consumes any nether precisions you have. So if you get 2 nether precisions from clear casting, and then you proc Ley Drinker on the first of those 2, it'll consume the second one. So you actually, it might be worse than the 1.8% that I quoted earlier, because you're not getting that nether precision buff on the Ley Drinker if you proc it first.
It might be a DPS loss.
Yeah. Well, you can also throw another clear casting and get the nether precision after, right? So it's still, you can still get it, but yeah, it might actually be a DPS loss in single target because of that.
I don't know. I feel like the structure of the tree is the main problem. Like they have the abilities and like everything's there, all the pieces of the puzzle. It's just the structure of it needs a lot of love.
Yeah. Agreed. I think basically what I was saying were like capstones need to be capstones as well. Dave, please.
I mean, I wouldn't even mind if they gated like moved Evo to where Surging Urge is or where Slipstream is, and then put Slipstream Chrono Shift in front of Siphon Storm. Like I think that's the biggest weakness in this tree, is that Slipstream, Chrono Shift, and Presence of Mind are basically being axed with this. There's no justifiable reason you'll get them anymore, I don't think. And the Mana Adept Slipstream choice was always a good choice because you didn't always need mana, right? And so sometimes that talent was a DPS neutral talent. Surging Urge is never going to be DPS neutral, and it benefits your burst, so it's always going to be useful. Even if it's a small amount of damage, it's always going to be useful. And I think that severely hinders your ability to pick up Slipstream, which is definitely the biggest miss in this rework.
Yeah.
Like,
Keep
all of our
utility
fun
out of
tools are
Spectres.
being kept. What was that?
I said keep utility out of my Spectres. That's what the class tree is for.
Yeah. I mean, in a general sense, a lot of the fun talents are being excised from current Arcane. Charge Door, Presence of Mind, Slipstream. Like, Charged Orb is a ton of fun, right? It's not super high damage, but it's useful. It's something you feel. It's something that you interact with, and yeah, it's gonna be sad to not have it available all the time.
Yeah, I think interaction's a really important thing. There's not a lot of that in this tree. It's just a lot of numbers. Which is my sign of a very bad tree.
And it's sad too, going from Dragonflight, where like Arcane can kind of have its cake and eat it too, right? You like drop one shitty talent, you can pick up Arc and Cleave, and now you have a Cleave build. You drop another shitty talent, you could pick up Orb Barrage, and now you've got an AoE build, right? It was just like very, very low trade-off to be viable in different forms of content, whereas this build is like gonna make, I think, some serious single target sacrifices to be AoE relevant. By comparison, at least.
Yeah, and I mean that's something that can keep specs out of keys for a long time. You know, you look at like Shadow or Fire, and they're kind of fine. That's what you're competing with.
Arcane has been meta in keys for so long. I think it needs a break.
Yeah, this is true. How will Twitter, if we get Fire and Frost out of Mythic Plus, and then Arcane becomes good, because we're like Arcane has never been good, how will Twitter handle another Mage spec being good in Mythic Plus? I don't know if it could.
I think what's more likely to happen is people are like, oh, Fire and Frost aren't good in keys, I guess I'm playing Warlock, you know?
Yeah. I that's funny. I jokingly said in our Mythic Plus chat this week, whenever it was bursting, I was like, right, play Arcane, Mass Barrier, bursting doesn't last as long, pull big. Easy for us.
Arcane is a ton of fun, and it's being slept on right now. I'm telling you, it is one of the best specs for keys right now.
All right, you don't need to convince me. I think it was the best non-pushing spec as well, like comfortably.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think its major weakness right now is that it just doesn't synergize with Og and Shadow Priest the way that Fire and Frost do, specifically Fire.
Yeah. It's okay. Og will get deleted at some point.
And no cheat death. You know? Give me Cauterize in the fucking class tree already.
Yeah, get this.
I want to turn my brain off during raid time and not give a shit about using my barriers for a change.
I've turned this into a choice node, but it's the wrong choice node. Where's my barrier DR versus Cauterize?
Yeah.
Okay. Are we good to wrap it up there? Does anyone want to chat about anything else before we leave it? Sorry, Frosties, but Blizzard did not change their spec, so don't blame us.
Yeah, I think Dave forgot Frost in the oven. Now they're overcooked, and they have Necrolord back.
Yeah. Yes.
It is kind of interesting that, like, overall this rework essentially made Arcane a fair bit worse, I think. Made Frost a lot more vulnerable to degenerate rotation, and probably a bit worse because of that. And then Fire just got, like, everything it wanted. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the Fire tree is banger as fuck right now, and, like, everything else is lagging.
Fire needs its time in the sun.
Yeah,
I might
true.
be being really critical, right? But like this game has been going on for 20 years. Like how can you regress specs? Like it doesn't like I don't know, maybe I'm being harsh on Blizzard, but like surely we know what we're sort of want out of like what makes a good spec and what players want, and you've just so much to look at and so much progress. I don't know.
I feel like there's been a lot of turnover behind the scenes at Blizzard, and maybe Mage has recently got a new dev, or a new dev team rather, and they're having to relearn some of the lessons that they were taught in the past. I feel like that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
I think they're hitting the money on Fire, but I think Frost and Arcane are suffering a bit from that.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, software has a high turnover rate anyway.
They rehired Hamlet, so that's it. Frost and Arcane, our days are back to the way they were.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were around for Hamlet much, DGen. That was our old class dev who very obviously favored Fire a lot and kind of ignored Frost and Arcane a bit.
Fake news, Fire's never been the favorite child.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm trying to think if we missed anything, but I'm not sure that we did. I think that's kind of all the changes from this week and last.
We didn't talk about control destruction, but I don't want to talk about control destruction, so
it's number tuning. Who cares?
Oh, there is there is a couple of other points. If Dave's listening here, force of will is still a talent. Please change that. I would like it to be something that I actually care about in any sense of the word. That's the spell slinger.
Oh.
The 2% crit, 4% crit damage increase in the spell slinger tree. The extremely passive talent. It's in the bottom middle.
Oh yeah, this whole tree was passive shit. So I just
And then they also nerfed controlled instincts. That's the top middle one. It used to be that it hit the primary target. Now it doesn't. So now the talent does nothing in single target at all. It's a 0% damage talent.
But this
a really odd choice.
Like this is what I'm talking about, like lessons and regression. Like why? Like that's just like talent design 101. Like I don't know. Okay, before we get into another 1 hour rant, any shoutouts before we close it off? I don't think so. We never do. Shout out to Dave.
Shout out Dave.
Yeah. Okay. Thank yous. Yeah. Apologies that if you're watching this live, like we kind of need to move the time around a lot, which makes it hard to, I guess, tune in every week. But this will be uploaded to YouTube. It should be every 2 weeks ish now. So yeah, hopefully Blizzard keep giving us stuff to talk about, and we can keep talking about it.